Elena Ceaușescu, once known as the mother of the nation in communist Romania, was executed by firing squad on Christmas Day in 1989. This event, which occurred just hours after a trial that lasted less than an hour, became a defining moment in the collapse of the Ceaușescu regime. The execution, filmed and broadcast to the public, was intended to mark the end of a brutal dictatorship. But it left many Romanians grappling with questions about whether it was an act of justice or mere vengeance. Elena was not just the wife of the dictator, Nicolae Ceaușescu. She was his most loyal enforcer. Born in 1916 to a poor peasant family, she had little formal education. She worked in a chemical lab before joining the Communist Party in the 1930s and marrying Nicolae, who was steadily rising through the ranks of Romania's Soviet-backed regime. Over the years, Elena's influence grew alongside her husband's. In the 1960s and 70s, as Nicolae consolidated his power, Elena was promoted to leadership positions within the Romanian Communist Party. She even secured roles in scientific institutions, including the National Council for Science and Technology. Despite her supposed academic achievements, such as a PhD in chemistry, there were widespread accusations that her academic credentials were fabricated, with many alleging that her research was plagiarized and her image as an intellectual was artificially constructed through state propaganda. By the late 1980s, Romania was in crisis. The country was suffering under brutal austerity measures, with the Ceaușescus prioritizing the payment of foreign debt at the expense of the population. Electricity was rationed to a few hours per day. Food was scarce, and hospitals were desperately lacking basic medicines. Life expectancy had plummeted, and the infant mortality rate was one of the highest in Europe. Elena, overseeing key industries like the national pharmaceutical program, contributed to the inefficiency and corruption that worsened the public's suffering. The regime's policies pushed Romania to the brink of collapse. The tipping point came in December 1989, when unrest erupted in the city of Timișoara. Protesters, demanding the removal of a pastor who had been outspoken against the regime, were fired upon by the secret police, resulting in dozens of deaths. Despite a media blackout, the news spread quickly, sparking outrage across the country. On December 21st, public speech in Bucharest turned into a disaster when the crowd began to boo Nicolae and Elena, exposing the fragility of their once-iron grip on power. Footage of their confusion and fear was broadcast across Romania, signaling the regime's imminent collapse. The Ceaușescus fled the capital by helicopter, initially hoping to reach a military base loyal to them. However, as the revolution spread, their options dwindled. The pilot of their helicopter claimed mechanical failure and landed it in a field near Tichu. The couple was eventually captured by passing motorists and detained by soldiers. For the next few days, they were held in a small room at a military base in Targovect under tight guard. Elena, described as arrogant and dismissive, refused to eat or speak to her captors. On December 25th, just days after their capture, the Ceaușescus were hastily tried by a military tribunal. The trial, which lasted only 55 minutes, was rushed through with charges of genocide, economic sabotage, and hoarding wealth. Despite the presence of public defenders, no meaningful defense was offered. Elena and Nicolae interrupted the proceedings with frequent outbursts, refusing to recognize the tribunal's legitimacy. Ultimately, they were dragged into a courtyard, tied up, and faced a firing squad of elite paratroopers. The execution was swift, but the sheer number of bullets fired raised questions about whether it was meant to serve as a final statement against the regime. The execution, filmed and smuggled to Bucharest, was broadcast to the public, though it was partially censored. The footage showed the couple being led to their deaths, their lives ending in a dramatic, public manner. International reactions were mixed. While some Western leaders expressed relief at the fall of the dictatorship, they also criticized the lack of legal process. The United Nations issued a cautious statement on transitional justice, acknowledging the complexity of the situation. In post-communist Romania, public opinion about the Ceaușescus remained divided. Some viewed their deaths as a necessary act of justice, while others saw it as a legal and moral failure. Their graves, located in Ghencea Cemetery in Bucharest, remain occasionally visited by loyalists and curiosity seekers. In 2010, at the request of their children, the bodies of the Ceaușescus were exhumed for DNA testing, which confirmed their identities. This sparked renewed debate about the handling of the regime's end. Romania today teaches the revolution and the Ceaușescu executions as part of its national curriculum, acknowledging both the horrors of the dictatorship and the fragility of justice in times of political chaos. Elena Ceaușescu's life and death serve as a case study in the dangers of unchecked power, propaganda, and the lack of accountability in state control. Her story is not just about dictatorship. It is about the speed with which an entire system can collapse when it is built on fear, and how justice can be quickly perverted in times of political upheaval. While Elena Ceaușescu's execution closed the chapter on one of the most repressive regimes in Eastern Europe, questions it raised about justice, vengeance, and the limits of political power remain open. History rarely forgets, and in the end, Elena's death may have ended the Ceaușescu regime. But the legacy of how it was done continues to provoke debate in Romania and beyond.